Okay. How you feeling?
Funny. I'm feeling funny. I'm feeling good. I'm excited. But I'm vibrating a little bit on the inside because I've never shared this story.
I know. So we met how long ago?
I believe it was 2006.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so too.
So we've known each other.
And the person that you were then and the person you are today, it's just been such an amazing journey.
I know.
And so thank you for allowing me to be a part of it.
Thank you for being part of it. I mean, you did get to see the biggest part of my growth.
Right.
Seriously. I mean, I've been working on this really since I was 19, but the majority of my healing so far has been from about the last 10 years, really.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
So going back a little bit, how did you, let's talk about your story. Let's talk about
my
your
story.
experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as you know, I have one brother
Mhm.
and my parents are deceased. My brother, I don't have any contact with him at this point in my life by choice. And so as far back as I can remember, well, let me back up. So let me start with, I really put this whole story together really the last 6 months.
Wow.
Where I actually took it from beginning to today, where it all the missing pieces that I've been looking for, I have found. And so I understand the story, and understanding the story has really accelerated my healing.
Oh, there you go.
So what happened is, my abuse started, and I'll show you the picture of when it started.
Okay.
So this is me.
Oh my goodness.
at about 4 years old, 3 or 4 years old.
Wow.
And the reason why this picture was so significant is because this is when it really started. So it's always been a part of my life.
It's amazing to me if somebody looks at a picture of a little girl like this, that they could think, let's do harm.
Right.
It's just, it's heartbreaking.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's heartbreaking because it even brings tears to my eyes because I think of who I was then,
Mhm.
and it did. It completely changed the direction of my life.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say is, I don't want to say it was worth going through.
No, I know what you're going to say.
But the healing that I've done, the growing that I've done, and the ability to help other people,
right.
I would go through it again.
Right.
To help others.
And I'm sure that there's going to be people that see this that aren't going to understand that.
Right.
Until they begin to heal.
Right.
And want to help someone else through.
Right.
Like, I've always said, and I think I've always said to you, that some of the things we go through, other people cannot imagine.
No.
But if we can help one person, if we can do good with that, then we really have survived and we really have healed.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Because with every person that you help, there is an absolute measure of healing for yourself.
100%.
When I was doing the childhood abuse healing workshop, before we would prepare for the 6-week class, it was intense and it was a lot of healing, and you're usually dealing with something new as you go into it, but it's amazing. It really is. It's been quite a journey, I will say.
Yeah. We're getting ahead of ourselves.
That's okay.
It's okay. We want to get to the story and how you got to the work, the
where
workshops will come.
Yeah. Right. So my abuse, what I realize now, looking back, a lot of it was my brother, and it was physical, emotional, and verbal abuse. That I know of. I don't believe I had any sexual abuse. I don't have any repressed memories that I have come up or anything. And with my parents, with my father, it was more abandonment, because he either would literally, and I mean physically, hide when my brother would act up, or he would have a good buzz going.
So either way, he was hiding.
My mother was definitely verbal and emotional abuse. There was some physical abuse as well. And so anyway, it started back when I was probably about 4. At the time I didn't understand, right? I don't understand what's going on. I just remember feeling like it's just so unfair every time something would happen. And because it started so young, I learned to kind of just shut down. And I can remember my safe place when I was a child was my bedroom, because I could shut the door, and what I would do is I would create my own world. And I had complete control of that time. And so when I was feeling scared or whatever, I would run to my room. The problem was a lot of times the abusers would come in and invade that space.
Sure.
And so, I won't get into a lot of the details about the abuse. I'll bring up maybe some stories that'll help you understand my mindset and then how I kind of work through that. But my brother he was an unhappy person. He started doing drugs very young when he was 13.
Oh my.
Yeah. And we're not talking marijuana. We're talking very heavy duty drugs.
Okay.
So he had some stuff going on. He was adopted. And so looking back, there must have been some kind of mental illness that he wasn't addressing, but we didn't know how to address.
Right. And so many years ago,
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about experiences we've had with, friends and people that we saw
Mhm.
that were supposedly in treatment, but they didn't know what they know today,
Right.
how to treat that kind
Correct.
of thing. So
The other thing that was, and I'll bring this up now, that's really critical is there wasn't protection for children then either.
no.
There were no laws protecting children really like there is today until the 1980s.
Wow.
So, and mental health as well. You were hyper or whatever. You were a troubled child. They never addressed that.
No.
And my parents didn't know what to do. And our family didn't even know about this. They knew my brother was a troubled person, but they didn't understand the depth of it. So there was a lot of secrecy.
Right. So he's self-medicating and no one understands.
And which makes him worse and more unstable.
Right.
And so he would come home, buzzed on something and just be in a bad mood and ask me a question. And if I didn't answer it right, he would attack me. And one of the biggest ones that stuck out, that there was a moment where I thought, oh, it's really obvious that no one's going to protect me anymore. So I got to do it myself. And this is a story I will share. And I was probably about 10 or 11. And my parents had another couple over, their friends, and they were sitting in the family room, and they were just visiting and stuff. And I came home and I went out there to sit with them because I love these people. And we were visiting, and my brother came home and he walked in the door, and I could tell just by the look. And so I just paid attention to what everybody else was doing. And he came in and he sat down and he looked at me and he said, "What day is it today?" And of course, being a 10-year-old, I'm like, "What?" And I got up to walk away because I was like, I am not dealing with this. He jumped over the couch, chased after me, dropped me to the ground, sat on me, choked me until I told him what day it was.
Literally hands around your throat.
Literally choking me.
And your parents?
Good question. When all was said and done and he stood up, I looked up and they were all just sitting there watching this whole thing.
All of them, including the guests.
All of them. And they just stood there, or they just sat there, and I stood there and I'm like, anybody going to do anything?
Right.
It was clear no one was going to do a thing. And they kind of went back to talking, and I went to my room.
Did it make you feel like this behavior was normal?
It did. Well, yes and no. That's a good question, because it felt normal because it was my normal.
Correct.
But I knew it wasn't normal.
But you knew something was wrong.
I knew something. I just didn't know the depth of it.
What it was.
And my thing, and it still kind of sticks in my head, the thought that comes in my head is, this isn't fair. What's going on? Why are you okay with this? Why are you okay?
Were you, this may not even be the right question, and so I apologize, but were you ever like, did he threaten, you can't talk about it? I mean, was there any of that? There was none of that. You just knew not to.
And that is a great question, because that comes up to today.
Correct.
Of my secrecy about it. And the only thing that comes to mind is shame. Shame is what kept my mouth shut, and my belief system about me and my value. And then you top it with some shame, and it's a perfect storm for keeping your mouth shut.
Do you know, someone told me once, I was dealing with something that certainly not at this level, but it was a priest, and he said to me, "You are judging that little girl with an adult brain.
Yes.
Like you should have known, you should have done."
Yes.
And is that part of the healing process, to understand that was a little girl who couldn't have done?
That was the game changer for me. That was a game changer. And that's what's happened over the last 6 months, is I'm realizing that little girl was alone and dealing with this, with her little mind. She was alone. She was afraid. She didn't have anybody to turn to. There wasn't a safe adult. I didn't have anybody in school help me. I didn't have parents, friends. I mean, because they didn't know. And so.
Right. Well, if you feel like if you can't trust the people in your own home, how do you trust anybody outside of that?
Right. And I've said for a long time, it's been my foundation that was so shaken up and never, laid right, I guess is the best way to put it, to build something on it, because it was so broken. I can remember having a visual of that in my life of, yes, that was
about that.
that was
That's
really
interesting.
interesting. That's very interesting. So it was probably about 15 plus years ago. And I was going through a growth spurt, and I was a mess, and I don't think you and I knew each other then. I think it was before you and I met. And I was sitting there, and it was just like God gave me this vision that my foundation was completely screwed up. And I visioned a house that was crooked. It couldn't stand upright. And the foundation, not only was it cracked, it was like pieces were lifting up, and there was actually weeds growing through it.
Oh my gosh, that's a vision.
How bad my foundation was. I could see it. And I felt like he's saying, we're going to tear this baby up, and we are going to lay a new foundation. And I felt like I went through hell going through that.
Well, you did. And it was quite a stretch, because that might have happened right before.
Yes.
Because when you and I met, you were very, very guarded.
I know.
Even in so many conversations that we had, and you had that revelation, but you were still holding on to, I can't talk about it.
No, there was absolute shame in that. And I was telling you earlier, and I'll bring it up now. I think because I'm realizing now in my life how much I didn't share. And I'll share this too. I had a girlfriend who just came over. She lives in Hawaii, and she's been here for a few weeks, and we've been having lunch, and she's known me since I was 15. So she's watched, and she actually lived with us for a short time. So she got to witness some stuff. But I realized before I had lunch with her, I'm like, I don't remember ever sharing with her. I wonder if I did. And so I asked her, and she said, no, you never shared. And she said, I knew things were bad because I knew you didn't get along with your brother, and I witnessed some of his yelling. But she said, you never said anything. And I think the root of that is absolutely shame. Every single person I have dealt with that has been abused has shame in one form or another, and it is crippling. There is nothing good about shame.
No, and you blaming yourself.
Oh, it's all my fault.
Thinking that you could have been able to control that.
Right.
Your parents didn't control it. There's no way that you could have as a child.
Right.
But you have no mechanism to tell yourself that.
Right. And so what I was saying earlier is, I think, the reason why I didn't share is because of the shame. It completely, if I share it with you, then you're going to know something, and then you're going to use it against me.
Oh, very real.
Oh, because that was my life as a child. And like I was sharing with you, my perfectionism problem came from that, because, if there's a hair out of place, I would get chastised for it. I would either be told I didn't brush my hair enough, or my brother had a heyday with it. Oh, your ears are sticking out or something.
Right.
So, okay, if I'm perfect and I don't share, then nobody can hurt me.
You know what I think is really important in this? I just want to, because we're going to move on to like your relationships and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I know we're going to go there, but I think it's really important for anyone listening to this who maybe was not a victim of abuse, but we were all formed by people in our lives who've done things like that.
Correct.
Like, your mom saying, oh, you cut your hair. Well, they left it really square. This is my mother. They left it really square. Oh, but it looks good.
Thanks, Mom.
And you're supposed to feel good about that. But all I ever heard was the
negative,
the negative.
Right.
Right. And so it's really funny, because my husband will say, 100 people could say you're doing a great job, and one person's going to go, and you're going to focus on that one person. And so it's a little bit human nature. So even people who've not been to that depth,
correct,
have been molded by those around them.
Exactly.
Knowing or not.
And that's really true. And that's the big thing about my podcast is it's going to be for, yes, certainly for people who are healing from their childhood abuse, but people who just want to grow. They don't have a big traumatic childhood,
right?
But they just want to grow, and things happen to us in our life that change the direction of where we're going. And, sometimes we can get back on track, and sometimes we can't, so yeah.
So then fast forward a little bit, right? Okay. You got married.
Well, let's back up even a little bit more, because I lost my mom when I was 16.
Oh, that's right.
So what's interesting that I realized is it, I'll say I was a pretty little girl.
You were. This is an angel.
Oh,
This is an angel.
she's just a pretty little girl. And my mom loved dressing me up.
Oh,
Easter.
yes.
You too, right?
Yes.
So we got our
Poofy dress.
Oh, yes. And our little hats, our little gloves, our little purse, our little frilly socks, our little shoes. I loved Easter because we would go shopping. And my mom loved to dress me up.
There you go.
So what happened when I was about in 7th grade, that's when I started gaining weight.
Oh, I forgot about this.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is
All
a
right.
huge one. So the abuse from my brother was significant throughout my whole life. The abuse from my mom really stepped up about then. And the reason why I put on weight, I look back now and I totally understand why, is I was emotional eating.
Sure.
That was a way that I was coping with this stuff I was going through. I didn't realize it. My mom went and bought the goodies and put them in the house, and she was nice and skinny because she smoked cigarettes, drank coffee. And so she started on me about my weight.
Ooh.
And she, the thing that frustrated me, I mean, I had no clue why I was putting on weight. Honest to God, I had no idea. No idea.
Well, no, you were, again, still a young girl.
Yeah. And I think back and she would just chastise me about my weight. And I think back and I'm like, but you're buying the goodies that I'm eating and you're not helping me do something different. Cause I didn't know why I was put on weight. So I don't know how to take it off. And so she got that's when the abuse really amped up for her and then, I'm a teenager. So of course I'm going to get mouthy and, so I struggled with my weight and it was so bad. The one thing that she said to me, she said, I'm not going to buy you any school clothes until you lose that weight.
Oh my goodness.
And the big thing was every year,
You got new clothes.
And then the summer I get new clothes.
Right.
And I didn't know how to lose the weight. So she didn't buy me the clothes. And I got finally down to one shirt and one pair of shorts. And my dad got livid and took me out and took me shopping.
Took you shopping. So she went from spending all this time and attention dressing you up to you're not worthy of my time and attention.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. Bingo.
Mm.
And so, so I struggled with that. And then by the time I got into high school, and I wasn't a lazy girl, I was really active. I was out playing all the time. So it wasn't like I was just sitting there eating, but I was eating in the evening. I would eat. I just remember I would eat from like after dinner.
Right. Yes.
All the way till I went to bed.
Right.
Yeah. So then about my freshman year, my mom found out she had breast cancer.
Okay.
And it was advanced. I didn't know it at the time, but it was advanced. And of course, back then they didn't have any of the screening like they do now. So by the time they catch it, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. And she was on chemotherapy for a year. She was really sick. And then she went into remission for a very short time. And then, I'm coming home from school and I'm seeing her laying on the couch and I'm trying to understand what's going on with her. And finally, I cornered my dad one day and I said, what is going on with mom? And he's got tears in his eyes. And he said, well, the cancer's back. And I said, well, is she going to be okay? And he said, I don't know, with tears in his eyes, but he knew at the time it was terminal.
Okay.
So he didn't share it.
Hard to tell your children, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't imagine. But he flat out lied to me.
But okay, so is that how you felt at the time, or do you feel like, or have you given him enough grace to think he was trying to protect you?
He was trying to protect me. He definitely was trying to protect me. I know that to be true.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't do that to my son.
Yeah. Well, now that you're a mom, you've got a different perspective.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'll finish the story and then you'll understand maybe a little more.
Okay.
I understand why he did it. And so I don't remember, that was just probably months before she died. And so the next several months, I'm helping. I'm coming home from school, I'm going to the grocery store, I'm buying groceries, I'm starting dinner, I'm giving her shots. We're doing this for months. And one week she's doing great. She doesn't need any help walking. She doesn't need any shots of morphine. She's doing great. And next week I lost her. And so what happened is the whole time they're telling me, oh, no, she's good. She's good. And She got rushed to the hospital. I didn't know that. And so I go up to the hospital, and how I find out she's dying is the doctor's in the room with her. My dad is downstairs somewhere. And he walks out and says, I give her 3 days. Maybe she'll make it through the night, and walks off. And that's how I found out my mom was dying.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So what did you do in that moment?
I wanted to hit the doctor.
Sure.
I wanted to hit the doctor. So I turned around and walked away, and a lot of her friends were there, and they were chasing after me. And then I saw my dad walk up, and he's a mess, and he's crying. And I'm like, what's going on? I mean, last week she was doing great. Like, what? I mean, this is what a lie can do.
Yeah. Oh, devastating.
I mean, you pulled out every single rug out from under me that you possibly could.
And I don't think that parents understand sometimes
Correct.
what children hold on to. You never know what it's going to be.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
And so you do the best you can. And
Right.
so like, I've never blamed my parents for things that I've discovered about why I am who I am today. I've never blamed them. They did the best that they could. And, but in the moment, there's just almost no forgiveness for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I look back and I look at the whole picture of my dad, and my dad he lived in fear.
Yeah.
Complete fear. And, it was later on in life that I looked back and I realized that my dad at that moment was becoming a widow, a single father. The love of his life, truly the love of his life, is going to be gone. I mean, I tried to put myself in his shoes, and it did absolutely give me empathy and compassion.
Sure.
It really did. And so I lost her, and, and again, I didn't get any help. There wasn't a lot out there, but I would think at school, like your counselors would reach out to you, your teachers, nobody did.
Right. Well, okay. But going back those years, I mean, did you really have, at that point, because when I was in school, and I know I'm a little ahead of you, but there were no counselors.
We had counselors in high school.
Okay.
But they really were, they were to help you get
academic counselors. Correct. Really. Correct. Not like now they've got support for.
Right. No. They don't. And, and it, again, I'm trying to fumble through this, trying to figure it out and at that time I was 16 years old when I lost her. And, I didn't have a lot of life experiences, obviously. Right. Sure. And that's a big one. And none of my friends could help me. I didn't have any friends that had been through this that they could help me. So my dad really shut down at this point.
Okay.
Because my mom really was his world. She was his social. She was his everything. And he struggled. And right after she died, he looked me in the eye and said, you need to quit school and you need to go get a job. I can't afford to support you.
Oh my goodness.
16 years old.
He told you to quit school.
Told me to quit school.
Did you in fact quit school?
Oh, no, I did not.
Okay.
No, I did not. I said, I'll get a job. I have no problem getting a job, but I am not quitting school.
Good for you.
And, he fought me the whole time on it. And then, when I turned 18, I got my mom's Social Security because, I was continuing on with school. He wanted that money.
Sure.
So what my dad also taught me in all that was the whole fear of money. I learned to fear money from my father.
So when you say fear of money, what do you mean by that?
Always feeling like I could lose it. I can't make it. Oh my God. Oh yeah.
So now you have a scarcity mindset. You don't think you're worthy. You've got shame. Should we pile on?
Oh yeah, we can pile on if you want. Yeah. Feeling worthy at all.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So and there's no value in me, right? And so in all that, some of the I call them symptoms that came out of this for me was people pleasing, right? Having no boundaries myself and not honoring other people's boundaries, relationship problems, which we'll go into, just how I felt about myself. I lived in constant chaos because that's what I knew. So my adult life was chaos, So yeah. So what's the next question you have? Where should we go from here?
So the next question, were there high school boyfriends or was hubby?
No.
First?
Okay. So
because this manifests, And when we're talking about relationships, it can mean so many things. So
Sure.
I want anyone hearing this to know that that means friendships. It means
It means
boyfriends.
everything.
It means everything.
Everything.
Relationship with yourself to begin with.
Oh,
But then
100%.
moving on to friends
Boyfriends
that
and
like
friends
this friend that you've just reacquainted with or seeing, and she's saying, no, you never said a word. So we know that.
Right.
So then you have boyfriends. So how does that?
Well, boyfriends I chased.
Ah,
And you want to know why?
Hmm.
I wanted to be loved.
right.
I just wanted to be loved. And when I look back on it, of course, there's that shame wants to come up,
Mm-hmm.
but it was what I did in my pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to learn to forgive myself
Right.
for that. So the relationships were, oh, I gotta have someone that loves me. So if a boy showed interest, oh,
Correct.
and
Yeah.
you know that to be true.
Yes, I do know that to be true.
got to
I have an
witness some of that.
experience I'll be able to share.
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so, and not knowing it. And then of course, what would they do? Ooh. And then what would I do? Ooh, right. So it's this back and forth, and I would chase them because I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted to be loved.
Mhm.
And I remember when I think back now, that was like the little record that played in the back of my head all the time.
Right. Did you find that you, I'm speaking from some experience, that you sabotage those relationships before they could hurt you? Or did you see them to the end?
Oh no, I saw him to the end.
Okay.
No, I saw him to the end. I'm sure I did some self-sabotaging, but it wasn't, I wanted the relationship.
Right.
I wanted to be loved. So I would do the people pleasing. I would do whatever they want, not to, to a certain
I know what you
degree,
mean. Mhm.
because I wanted them to stay.
Correct. Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Because that could be different for many people.
Oh, sure.
People
Mhm.
who feel like they're not worthy or are consistently hurt,
Right.
then they're pushing people away before they can hurt them.
Correct.
Right.
That's very
And
common.
so, yeah. So then how did you settle down? What made you,
Yeah. Well, and
how did you choose? How did that happen?
how did I end up where I'm at today?
No, hubby.
Hubby.
Let's talk about hubby.
Oh, the first hubby.
First hubby. I didn't know whether to say first or not. So
Been married 3 times.
I know that, but I wasn't sure. Where are we going?
We're going to be authentic and very transparent here.
I love it.
And so I met my first husband. Actually, we were friends for a few years. I met him actually right after my mom died, when I was 16.
Oh, okay.
So we were friends for a couple of years because I had a boyfriend and he had a girlfriend, and we just would hang out and party together. And then when I was about 19, a relationship started.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you the exact, I guess it's unconscious thought that ran through my head. This is the only man on the face of the earth that will love me.
So you feel like you had to stay in it because
He's the only
nobody
guy
else would love you.
Right. And I want to be loved, right? I'm looking for love. And so he loves me.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to screw that up.
Right.
I'm not going to give that up, even though he was not treating me well from the minute we got together.
So what did that look like?
A lot of lying.
Mm-hmm.
He even stole from me.
Mm.
Yeah. But he's the only man that's going to love me. And I'm saying this like, I don't want him out to be the bad guy.
No, this is not about him at all. It's
Correct.
about you and because you created that.
Correct. I allowed it.
You could have walked away. You could have,
Correct.
but that's where you were at that point in your life.
Right.
And so this was acceptable.
Correct. I put up
The
with
trade-off. It was the trade-off for love.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. That's what I was going to have to live with in order to have love.
Right.
Because he's the only guy that's going to love me. Yeah.
Wow.
It's kind of frightening to think back on that and what I did. And so it was not a good marriage for either one of us.
And you were married a long time. So let's put
Yeah.
this in perspective. How many years?
We were married 25,
25.
and together about 30. Yeah. So we were together a long time. And really what happened in the end of that part of it is I outgrew him.
You started to heal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to live like that. And I didn't want to live in the chaos, and I didn't want to live with the lies. And I didn't want to do it. And I didn't want anything bad to happen to him, but I just didn't want to be around that anymore. I was done.
Now, did your son, because your son at this point is a young man.
Yeah.
And did he have something to do with you saying, I've got to make a decision here. I've got to do this.
Ooh,
Did he have, because, as
that's
a
good
mom,
question.
we're protective with our children. I'm wondering, when you make a decision, I've been divorced, and my decision had a big part to do with what I'll put up with for myself. I would not put up with for my child.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you had that experience.
Yeah, that definitely did. I mean, the forefront was definitely, I felt like I had to stop it.
Correct.
And yeah, it was for me and for my son. And just, yeah, the craziness. And it was affecting my son, and he was lying to him as well.
Mm.
And I don't think I know him well enough to know that when he said stuff, he probably meant it at the time, but he didn't follow through.
Mm. Mm.
And it still looked like
So he
lie.
wasn't intending to lie.
He wasn't intending.
He just couldn't.
He just couldn't.
Yeah.
He had, it's really two people came together who were hot messes and tried to have a marriage.
I think a lot of people, I think something that I learned in that arena is, we marry people, but we don't take into account what they're bringing into it from their background. And it won't work if you don't have either similar experiences or you're striving for similar experience, right?
Right.
Because, knowing that, this person, their father treated their mother this way, so they think that's totally okay.
Right.
And this person, parents were loving and whatever, and that's the expectation. Well,
Right.
that doesn't jive.
Right.
So
and exactly. And it's just what you know and what you're bringing into the marriage. And then, yeah, if they clash and you don't know how to work that through.
Correct.
And we were both really young when we got married. And I think emotionally we were even younger than we were.
Right.
And so, we did go into it probably both with the same ideas, we love each other and we're going to make this work. And, he just,
yeah. But, and so 25 years, I remember very distinctly how long it took you to even say out loud that he was out of the house and that he was gone.
Yeah. I hid it from everybody for a long time.
And we were pretty close.
We were really close then. You were
And
probably the closest girlfriend, and yet I didn't share it with you.
Which is a revelation, right? We'll talk about that.
Revelation.
We talk about that friendship. But I just remember when you told me how long it had been, and that basically you were kind of laid up, like non-functioning.
Oh, I was
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So
even though you knew it to be right, talk about what that process was still like.
That triggered the big abandonment issue that I had in my life, right? Because I've had pure abandonment growing up. And so what happened is, we fought bad. It was, and that was the thing. I didn't want Corey to be exposed to my son. I did not want him being exposed to the screaming matches that we had. And I am not proud of that at all. And I've apologized both to my ex-husband for that and my son as well. And so he left, he walked out, he ran, he hid, which is what he had a history of doing. And so I married my father. I married my father.
There it is.
Yep. I married my father.
Our poor fathers.
Yeah.
Right. Our poor fathers. We when we say things like that, it's like,
Yeah. Oh, that didn't sit well. Because I'll tell you, I don't know if I didn't tell you this. I'll tell you a real quick story about one time when I was young and my brother was in one of his screaming matches. I don't remember if he was screaming at my mom. They would get in really bad screaming matches. And I remember looking around for my dad. Where's my dad? Where's my dad? He literally hid in the bedroom. He literally went to the furthest corner in his bedroom and hid.
So you learned that the bedroom was a safe space for
I
you.
did. He was doing it for me. True. I learned that from my father as well. So I just married a man who was emotionally not there.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
And you didn't even know that at that point.
I didn't realize it. No, I didn't realize it. And so he left and I didn't tell anybody because I really thought we were going to get back together.
I think, and I could be wrong about the timing. It seems to me it was 3 months
Yes.
of you
Mustering.
locked down and before you actually set it out.
You're right. You're right.
I think it was 3 months.
I think it was because we were actually supposed to go on a trip together and we couldn't because I couldn't leave. So yeah, that's about right. It was about 3 months.
So can we back up just a little bit before that?
Yeah.
You made a statement just a little while ago because you outgrew him. So talk about the processes that put you in a place where where you had the power and authority to even fight back. Like the screaming matches you're talking about. I mean, I know that was you trying to fight back.
Yeah.
So tell me what you were doing. What was the road you were on that caused you to say, this is not okay?
Yeah.
What was the work?
That's a good question. So, I started the whole journey when I was 19.
Right.
But at about this time, like probably about a year or two before he left, I really was aware of, we were in a cycle. It was a cycle. He was in a cycle, which took us in a cycle, and I was riding the cycle with him. I was allowing it. And it was just this constant, things would go good, and then something would happen, and then we'd fight, and then we'd make up. And it was just constant. And so I knew I needed to change that.
Mhm.
And so there were just little tweaks in me that I started changing that worked for me. It didn't work for the relationship,
Right.
but it was working for me.
Mhm.
And I was starting to feel healthier. I was starting to heal more. So I knew I was headed on the right track, and I was taking more and more steps within myself to change me so that I wouldn't always be so reactive with him.
Mhm.
I didn't get very successful with that until after he left, of course.
Of course, but you had already started doing the work
Oh,
with
yeah.
women. You had
Yes.
started to do the workshops.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of where I was going.
Oh, okay.
Because
You're right.
and the Bible study and there was work
Right.
that was happening.
That's true.
And you were doing it for other people, but it really was impacting you.
Absolutely. So yeah, you're right. Let me bring that up.
Mhm.
So for 8 years, and this was in the mid, I think between 2000 and 2010. I don't remember exactly. It was about 8 years that I co-facilitated a workshop through church when I was going to church. And it's the Childhood Abuse Healing Workshop. And it was an 8-week program where we only have about 12 to 15 women that would come in, and we would help them walk through the healing from their childhood abuse.
Mhm.
And then we also, which was really powerful, we would have a 1-on-1 or 2-on-1 personal healing session. So the other person, her name was Beverly, her and I would meet with the person, and we would do a 3-hour, just deep healing session. And so, yeah, every time you do one of those, you're going to go through
Your own stuff.
and it would come up, and I would work through it. And it would always prepare me for the workshop as well as my personal life. So you're right. That's probably the catalyst that really
Right.
helped my healing, because you can't help but heal. I mean, you'd have to really fight it not to heal.
Correct.
So yeah, you're right. And so I did that. We did the workshop for 8 years. And I think you're right. That is a big part of my push.
Mhm.
And then once I got out of, we stopped doing the workshop. I still was doing stuff on my own.
Mhm.
My biggest thing is I would listen to Joyce Meyer.
I know.
I still love that woman.
We
Profound.
we had trips together on.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful. Oh,
Mhm.
I still love her. Oh my God, she's just wonderful. She really helped do a lot of the inner healing too, because she has a similar background. She was severely abused.
I think it's important when people talk about abuse, they don't actually, people may have a preconceived notion of what that means.
Yeah.
Does that mean sexual? Does that mean
Right.
abuse comes in so many
Right.
forms? And people may sit in judgment that one is worse than another, but abuse is abuse.
Abuse is abuse. And, it's interesting. One of the women in the workshop, she was coming to the workshop to support her friend.
Right.
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 And I was visiting with her, and she said, well, I wasn't abused. I'm here for Liz. I'm here to help Liz.
Correct.
To support her. My father was an alcoholic, but I wasn't abused. And I looked at her and I said, you were abused. An alcoholic is going to neglect you. They might be a fun alcoholic.
Doesn't matter.
But they're not meeting your needs. A
Mhm.
child does not need to be entertained by a drunk adult.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right. It comes in many forms, and everybody reacts different.
Right.
And so one of the things coming up that I did is I had the victim mindset, and I've seen the victim mindset kind of in 2 ways. I'm sure there's more, but what I witnessed in doing this workshop is I took the mindset of a victim of, okay, everybody, I was abused, so you have to be nice to me, and you just have to understand Now that was in
Mhm.
the back of my mind. Mind you, I wasn't doing this in the forefront of my mind, but that was my mindset.
Right.
And so I took no notice on my behavior. And this is before I really started healing. This is before I knew you, thank God,
Oh,
right? It was bad. I mean, I was not aware.
ah,
And so the victim mindset I had was, you just all have to be nice to me. And I don't have any responsibility in what happens to me. Right.
right.
And then Beverly, who co-facilitated with me, she had a victim mindset that was very different. And I've seen both of these. And hers was, oh no, you victimized me. You're never doing it again. And I'm going to be in complete control.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to manage this whole thing. So she would be, she admits she was promiscuous and stuff, but it was her making that decision.
Her choice.
Right.
Right. And knowing her even later in life,
Yeah.
knowing her, that was really apparent.
Right. Right.
Like, she's going to lay down the law.
Right.
It's going to be her way. We're doing this. And if you pushed back on her at all, it was almost battle.
It was.
And then that's just her thing. I mean, that's not negative about her in any way.
Right.
It just, she was very staunch in her position.
Right. Exactly. And so I see that a lot. And so I took that victim mindset. And so I took that into my marriage as well.
Mhm.
Right. And so that's why there was a screaming matches. I wasn't taking responsibility for my part in it at all.
Ah,
Well, I would when I would calm down. But when I was in the midst of that rage, anger, because it was always there. It was. And what I realized too is I was living in survival mode.
always.
I didn't realize that until recently. And it's crazy because my stress level was always right here because I was living in survival mode, and I literally was.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything happened, boom, it didn't take much.
Right.
And boom, I was off to the races.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
And it would go from here to over the top. And so that is what I took into this marriage. And, so he walked out, and the healing process, one of the biggest things for me,
Mhm.
and this one, is learning that I had no control over anybody else but me.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest, I was very angry.
Mhm.
I can tell you exactly where I was at, sitting in the living room. I was mad because once again, he made a promise and broke it, and we were trying to make things work. And it was just this constant up and down, up and down. I was done. And I just remember being so angry and stood up and was just screaming in the house by myself.
Mm.
And just realized at that moment, I have no control over any of this.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
And it was, 2 lives also untangling. That's a long time to be together.
That's a lifetime.
That's a lifetime. His family was my family. We were very close. But what I really realized is I married my family.
Yeah,
I did. And I still love them. I still care about them. I absolutely, nothing negative at all. We all have our stuff.
and see, that's it right there. People don't understand when you call out a behavior. It doesn't mean you don't love that person. It doesn't mean you don't cherish them, but it does mean that behavior is not okay.
Right.
And that needs to be okay with you.
Right.
To be able to say that.
Right. And the thing that separates, this is really interesting. What came to my mind when you say that is, say that again.
Say that again. It doesn't matter. It's the behavior.
Right.
It's not the person. I can care about you, but I don't appreciate this behavior.
And then you have someone like me who makes a mistake, and that becomes my identity.
Okay, give me an example of what you mean.
If I make a mistake, if I accidentally hurt someone, can't let it go. Couldn't let it go. I would go down the list of what an awful, horrible person I am.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, the overthinking would go into overdrive. The times that I've hurt you and I've recognized it, like there were times I didn't sleep.
Seriously.
Honest to God.
Wow.
Well, that's also part of me being an empath. And that was an out of balance empath as well.
Sure.
But, it's devastating. And it becomes my identity. Okay, I'm a horrible person. I put labels on myself all the time.
Oh, that's awful. Yeah, but giving yourself grace, you didn't know how to do anything other than that.
No, because nobody gave me grace.
Well, right. And nobody nobody helped you understand that that's okay. I mean, I meet people that there's a couple of things that people say, and they say it off the cuff, and I don't think that they realize the depth of it.
Right.
When they say something like, well, so-and-so thinks you hate them. And my response is always the same. I don't know them well enough to hate them.
I love it.
Do you know what I mean?
Great response.
Do you understand the depth of what you're saying?
Right.
I mean, I have an ex-husband. I don't hate him.
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
No.
hate is just, it's such but for me, that's just huge.
That's a small pocket of people that you could put in that category. And I can't think of anybody right now that I hate.
Correct. That I would put that much emotion or energy into hating. Right. I'll dismiss you from my life. Right. But I'm not going to invest any energy in hate. No. And so it's interesting. And that's why I think I've always had that perspective with you. It's like, no, it's this behavior. Right. It's not you as a person. It's this. Right. It's this. And can we fix this?
And we've talked about that, where we separate the person from what they do.
Correct.
Because you can still love a person right where they're at. Right. But you don't love what they're doing.
Right. Right.
And that's okay.
But for all that you've been through, you've always been really good at that.
Really?
You have. And
since you've known me.
Since I've known you, we can qualify it there. Yeah. But I think it's that empathy that allows you to do that.
Right.
Like, we don't know what their story is. And so this behavior, yeah. I think you've said it here. I don't think they intended to do this, but this is what they did.
Right. And there are bad people out there that do intend to hurt you. Sure. Right.
But not the masses.
No. I think the most part, people they don't mean to hurt you. It's not their intent.
Right.
And I don't think that my ex-husband intended to hurt me at any time. He just has his own stuff. And, I wish him well.
Right.
Right. And in all that, and we've talked about this, and I'm going to bring it up, is about my voice.
Yeah.
And the lack thereof. Right. So in all this, I started to get a voice, and we've talked about this. So my voice got shut down, right, as a child, because it didn't matter if I said something bad or whatever, depending on the person on the other end. If they weren't in a receiving mode, I would get it. So I learned to shut up.
Well, they literally choked it out of you.
Yeah.
Literally.
They literally did. That's a good point.
I mean, if you really want to put a fine line on it, literally choked it out of you.
Oh my God. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So finding that voice.
You can see why the voice got shut down, and I physically couldn't bring it up. Right. So, and all this, I've been told over the years, oh, you're so private, you're so secretive. Part of that is, not with you, but with others, that it wasn't a safe place. But I didn't feel safe with anybody.
I was just going to say, because to some degree, we've been through it.
Oh, absolutely.
You and I,
we're going to talk about it.
Because even if I was a safe place, you couldn't perceive what that looked like.
Because I never had it.
Right.
See, that's the thing that I'm realizing about myself. And this is where my grace is coming in, is I'm realizing, and it's not a boo-hoo. It's all I know. It's all I know. When we're born, we're a blank slate. And our parents teach us what we take into our adult life.
Whether they're trying to teach you or not.
Right.
By action.
I certainly learned what mother not to be.
And you've been a wonderful mother.
Thank you.
You've been a wonderful mother.
Thank you.
Yeah. Corey's a blessing.
He is. Yeah. He is. God gave me a true blessing for sure.
He did.
And so the voice. So yeah, it got choked out of me. And so over the years, I just, I didn't talk about my abuse too much. And then you and I have had our conversation about that, because you will explain, like,
well, before we go there, you also had a business relationship, a business partnership early on.
Yes.
And you wouldn't, even though you knew, and even though you and I talked many, many a time, that was kind of where my coaching of you came.
Oh, yeah.
To kind of get you to see that this relationship was not a positive one for you.
Yeah.
This was not a friendship then, and you were holding on to it because we were friends, because you and this person were friends, and it really was not serving you. And it took a long time for you to say out loud, this is not okay with me.
Oh, totally. It did. Yeah. What, a couple of years?
And the thing is that I just think it's important to mention it, because we said we're talking about all kinds of relationships.
Yeah.
So it's friendships in high school that you didn't share with. It's a husband that you could not trust or rely on,
Mhm.
or that didn't serve, that relationship didn't serve you. You had a business relationship that didn't serve
Right.
you. So in all this time, you're learning and you're finding your voice.
Right.
But I mean, it's not an overnight, I had an
No.
aha moment, now all things are good. I mean,
Right.
it's a work in progress. And I think
Yeah.
that people need to understand that.
It definitely is a work in progress. And the good thing is, today there's much more out there to help you than then.
Mhm.
There wasn't the coaches, there was therapists, and I did do that, and that certainly helped. But there wasn't a lot of help out there for
Right,
people.
right.
A lot of times it was me and God.
Right.
A lot of times it was just me and God.
Well, I'll never forget. Okay. So we'll talk about our relationship. I'll never forget. You came into my office and you asked, I don't even remember how we started the conversation, or you knew that I was not feeling particularly happy at the moment with you.
Yes.
And I said to you, I said, all of this has happened and now you're in a good place, right? Marriage has ended,
I got
business
into
relationship, you got into a new relationship,
Right.
and then, what happened to our relationship,
Right.
kind of thing. And I just felt like, okay, maybe we're just colleagues.
Oh my
I remember
gosh.
feeling that. Do you remember that? We talked.
Oh, I do.
And I
that
said,
was
well,
one of the.
If this is one of your personal moments, I know.
Oh,
And
no, it's
I said,
okay.
if we're just colleagues, that's okay. I just thought it was more because, I mean, gosh, we moved you out of your house. I mean,
Oh, you've been a
we're
big
there,
part of mine.
right? And so I just had that feeling
Yeah.
from you that was that push-pull thing. So you were
Right.
kind of retracting,
Right.
and you said to me, but you're probably my best friend in the world. And I looked at you like, seriously?
Yeah, you did say you did say that. You did, and rightfully so.
And how would I know that? And then we came to this place where you just didn't recognize. And this is again where you said your behavior, you just were unaware.
Completely.
Just completely unaware. And so we got through that and just moved forward. And,
Right.
But it was just such a pivotal moment
It
in
was
this relationship.
It totally was for both of us.
Right.
Because I mean, that shows you how different we both saw it.
Correct.
And that is big for people to understand, and I'm glad that you said that, because who knows where our relationship would be today if you didn't.
Well, to me, it was worth fighting.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Right.
And we know that now.
And I didn't realize that that's how you were feeling.
Yeah.
I had no clue. I knew
because you were in your own world.
I was in my own world.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, I found love again. I'm good. And then I married a narcissist. Full on narcissist. Didn't know it. And bless his heart, he's gone to heaven, and
Yes,
I wish him the
yes,
best. That was I didn't know he was a narcissist even when the stuff was happening. It wasn't until like recently when they start putting a label on it. It was nutsy. It was complete nuts. I won't get into too much detail there because Dennis isn't here to
he can't defend himself. God bless him.
But and it was, again, I was still in that mindset of I gotta find love.
It's really interesting. I'd like to ask you about something that I've never asked you.
Go for it.
So you ready?
Go for it.
So at the end of your marriage and after Dennis passed, so both marriages,
Right.
You took, like, after Dennis, it almost like you didn't even take a heartbeat. I want this all cleared up. I'm moving on with my life. You did the same thing with Mark. I'm moving out of the house. I'm starting my life. And it was really interesting how when you finally were there, you just like,
yeah,
we're done.
Yeah.
I'm done with this and we're moving on. So where did that strength come from? Or was it strength, or was it running? How would you identify that? Because I've never really asked you.
That's a good question, because, and that is something that I have done. Like when I finally get to the end of something, I'm done.
Takes you a while to get there, but
it takes me a while to get there. And I give way more opportunity probably than I should, or I should have at the time. I don't know. I don't know what the strength is. And with Mark, I remember sitting and having a conversation, and this was after I don't know how many months of me trying to work it out with him, and it just wasn't working, and it wasn't working. And I remember you and I having the conversation, sitting in that hotel room, and I just looked at you. We were just like this. And I looked at you and I said, he's given me too much time. I've learned to live without him.
Correct. I remember you saying that.
And that was the pivotal moment. Now, of course, for the next few months, it was still
really
emotional. And when I went and filed for the paperwork, it's not what I wanted. And it was very emotional. It was not easy, but I knew it wasn't going anywhere. I
Yeah.
had enough.
And do you think that was more about feeling like you failed?
No,
No.
actually
Awesome.
the opposite. I felt like I have done everything in this marriage that I can do. I'm out.
Gosh, that is
Seriously.
amazing. I
Seriously.
mean, that's big, a long road,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And so you finally came to that place
Right.
where I've done everything I can. I deserve better.
I can't do this anymore. I just can't.
So proud.
I did not want to do the cycle thing anymore. I was sick of it. It was spinning me out. And then with Dennis, you know, it's funny because, and I did not share this with you, I don't think. I swear, I guess I'm in my head so much. I think I tell people stuff and I don't. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. I'm becoming much more aware of it. So about 2 or 3 months before he got the diagnosis, the fatal diagnosis, I was done.
No.
And I had a plan. And my plan was, I was going to save my money up and I was getting out and I was leaving everything behind. I was literally going to go rent a room that had somebody had a bed in it and I was going to sleep in there and I was going to completely start over. So I had already gotten to the point because I could tell stories. I won't bore you with it here. I can share it with you later, but crazy shit that he was doing, really crazy. And I would actually, excuse my French, but I would look at him and say, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Because it was so crazy, the stuff he was doing.
Yeah.
So by the time, so he got the diagnosis and I go, okay, I put the brakes on my plan. And the idea was, let's get him through this, get him healthy. If he's willing to go to counseling, great. If not, I'm out. That was the absolute plan. Well, unfortunately, the cancer, he didn't get through it.
You know, it's interesting because when you married him, I remember being concerned about it. Just leading up to
you were
the wedding.
Concerned the whole time.
The whole time.
And
just like what? Just decisions for the wedding, you know, and just feeling like it was rebound. I felt like you were still chasing that a little bit.
Oh, I was totally chasing the love.
Yeah.
I was totally chasing love. I still haven't found anybody that loves me.
At that point. Well, we can't talk about that now because you have the love of your life.
I have the love of my life. He is amazing.
Do you remember when we were shopping for your wedding dress and you said, this is too much? And I said, you have found the love of your life. You deserve this. Because
we both cried.
We both cried. Because, you know, I'd watched this, you know, all of this and this healing. And here comes this man who says, I'm going to fight for you.
Yeah.
I love you. And there's nothing that we can't overcome together. And that's the message he gave you before he married you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just have so much respect for that.
I know.
I mean, Brian and I both, because, you know, Brian will, you know, my husband will defend me. You can do anything to him. You can't do it to me, but you hurt my friends. It's right up there in the same line.
Yeah.
Like he's like, you know, and so when he sees you with Larry, we both feel like she's there.
Yes.
She's arrived at a place where I deserve this love.
Yes.
I have this love.
And I trust him.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, he's taught me a lot. I mean, he's been a big part of my healing too, because he comes from a very different background. He sees things different. So I constantly watch and observe how he handles stuff, especially with relationships. He tends to put up with a little too much sometimes, more than I would, but I'm learning to not go into everything. I can't trust it. I got to look for that thing to be wrong. Instead, he goes into it, you know, pretty trusting. Yeah.
I think I'm a little bit more that way. I will trust you until you give me reason not to. You
do.
So you give me reason not to, and then, you know, we can be done.
Right. And what the thing I am absolutely working on, it's right in this realm right here, is it is that thing of, I can't go into every situation of no trust. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Suspicious. That's the way to put it.
Yes.
Suspicious. That's the best way to put it. I can't go into everything suspicious. And I do, because when you zip back to when I was a little girl, I can remember, like, I would open the front door and assess the situation. Okay. Who's home? Oh, my mom's home. what kind of mood is she in?
Mhm.
Oh, my brother's here. What kind of mood is he? So assess the situation before I even step in.
Mhm.
So I learned that as part of my foundation.
Right.
And that is something I'm trying really hard to break right now because it is so embedded in me.
But I've always had I think it's kind of normal. Well, maybe it's not normal. I don't know. I've always had a problem with what I call inconsistent personalities.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you can't trust them.
when you walk in the door, either if I know you either like me or you don't, and either is okay because you have that choice, but you don't get to like me sometimes and then treat me horribly
Yeah.
another time. Like
Yeah.
you walk in the door and there've been people that you cross paths with like, well, hi, how are you today? And then you get the cold shoulder and like,
Yeah.
well, what did I do?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and so people like that it's always been difficult for
Right.
me.
Because they're unpredictable. You don't know what you're walking into.
Right.
What are you stepping into? Are they a good mood today?
Right.
There were family members, when I was married that were that way. Every holiday was determined about how this person was feeling that time.
Right. Well, you did say, you married your family. And I know that you tried to hang on to that original family a little bit from the first marriage, and then found that, well, this kind of explains who he was,
Totally.
and
Totally.
that wasn't serving you anymore.
Totally. Yeah. I understand the whole dynamic and understand why he's made the decision. It's just interesting when you come from the background that I came from, you have choices in life and you can spend your life being a victim and expecting everybody else to take care of you, or you can put on your big boy or big girl pants and start figuring out how to do things different. It's just like when I'm triggered, I now recognize when I'm triggered, I slow down, I take a breath, and I do not react the way my mind is instantly telling me to, because it's always wrong.
So can you give me an example of what that looks like?
Oh, let me think of an example. Well, if I walk, an old example. So if I walk in, like your example is great. When you walk into the room and this person is in a bad mood, well, or whatever, they're not reacting to me
as you would think,
as I expect them to be, because I've got
important
a healthy filter on, right? No. And so I walk in with that, and then this person isn't reacting the way I expect. So that triggers me.
Right.
And so then this dynamic starts.
Correct.
Right. And I'm not, instead of going, maybe they don't feel good, or maybe, they're just off. Maybe they're just in a bad mood. It may have nothing to do with me.
Right.
It's so freeing.
But that, I think it's just so interesting because a lot of people have that.
That's true. That's true.
Like, what did I do? What,
right.
Why are you treating me this way? When really it could have absolutely nothing to do with you.
Absolutely not.
9 times out of 10, they don't even recognize that they've done anything to you. They don't even know that they looked at you a certain way.
Right.
Because they probably didn't even notice it was you. Do you know what I mean?
Right. I have a perfect example of that. And it was kind of shocking when the person told me. So it was a couple that I went to church with, and apparently this had happened months before. I was completely clueless. And I was talking to the wife one day, and she says, well, her husband, we'll just call him John. John is really upset with you. What did I do? Well, a few months back, you walked into church and you sat down, you turned around, you glared at him. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Can you glare?
I could. Ask Corey. Ask my son. I have the mom look. But I said, I've never been upset with your husband at all. Like, why would I glare at him? I was so stymied, but that shows you, it may have been, I turned around and I was looking,
or
and
somebody.
I was, I squint because I can't see real well. And he thought I was looking at him. I mean, so why would you carry that? Why wouldn't he come up and say, hey, why'd you look at me like that? Like, joke around. Like, why does it have to?
Or address it and just say, hey, that seems odd. What, did I do something to him? I mean, ask.
Right.
We jump to conclusions.
Right. And he carried that for months. And I would, I'm like, how would I have ever known? Right. So, yeah.
I know that's not, and even when you do have a healthy filter on, it's hard to accept that kind of behavior.
Right.
But you've just come so far. In what ways do you feel you're still needing? What do you feel like you still need to accomplish?
Well, I don't believe that we ever completely heal.
No. Oh, that's interesting.
Mm-mm,
Okay.
mm-mm, no,
Tell me.
I feel like you're always healing, or at least growing.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a great measure of healing, but the thing I look at this, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong, I know this to be true for me, is that all I know is what I know, and I'm changing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have measures of healing, but that stuff changed the direction I was going. And that stuff changed the way I see stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for the rest of my life, I'm going to be learning how to look at things different and respond different and react different and think different. Everything has to be different.
Right.
And so I think that you always have a measure of healing, but healing can turn into growth, just turn into growth. But I think that certainly I'm getting better about relationships. I'm working on the trust and not allowing myself just to walk into something with just that mindset. Like I'm going into it with awareness of, don't go into it thinking that people don't like you.
Right.
Because that was the message. Oh, that's an important one I should share.
Go ahead.
So I had the belief, and I'm turning this one around, that nobody likes me.
Ooh.
And you know where it came from?
Where?
It's a very distinct memory. So I was about 11 years old. And this is really weird. My brother and I drove my mom to work because my brother needed the car. My brother was 7 years older than me.
Okay.
So I can tell you exactly where it happened. I could picture it all right now. But we were driving back from my mom's work, and we were getting along, which we could talk. We could have a conversation like you and I. And then he would snap. So we're having a conversation, and he goes, well, you know that Bart and Dorothy and Bill and Peg, none of the family friends like you, right? You know that, right? And I can remember looking at him and then looking forward and just feeling devastated. I instantly believed him.
Wow.
Without question.
Even knowing who he was and what
Yes.
he was, you still bought in.
I 100% bought in. And remember, I just felt so sad. I didn't cry in front of him, I don't think, but I wanted to, because I just think these people are like the world to me. I love them. You know, they were like Bart and Dorothy. Bart especially was like my father. He was so special to me.
Right.
And they didn't like me. Nobody liked me. And I had it all backed up with all the proof before that. And then there was, because I put that filter on, that's how I looked at everything, that up until, I don't know how many years ago, not that many years ago, oh, people do like me. Do you see why?
Yes.
Do you see?
Yes.
That mindset? Yeah. And I worked through that. And I think one of the biggest healings for me is I've been doing EMDR with my therapist, which is it's a practice where it's a practice where they change the way you think about things.
Okay.
So the way of bad memories.
What does that stand for?
I'm not
know.
Okay. No, I don't.
Right, that's okay.
It's an acronym. It is an acronym. I never remember what the whole thing is. But what they do is they take a bad memory like that. I actually work through that memory, because like I sat and told you that memory, and it doesn't have any effect on me anymore.
Oh, that's awesome.
Where when I was doing the EMDR, it still, it would hit my heart.
Yeah.
Oh, it would hit.
You can still feel the weight.
Oh yeah. And I don't feel it anymore. But in that, the biggest thing that came out of that for me was truly, in my heart of hearts, realizing that the childhood abuse was not my fault. I wasn't a mistake. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't an accident. I was absolutely and on purpose. I have value, but that was big for me. And I actually had a voice, and we didn't finish on the voice thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the voice thing was big because I worked on that in EMDR. So I can just remember, like you and I wouldn't say things to you because they physically wouldn't come out of me.
Right.
And I remember we were in your car one time.
And you actually said that to me. You said, I can't make it come out.
Yeah, I think that was just before that I had realized that words were getting stuck in my throat, literally physically getting stuck in my throat. And we were having a conversation, and you asked me something, and it would not come out.
No, I remember, because you teared up.
I did.
And you said the words won't come.
Right.
Like they won't come out.
Right.
And I could just see that there was like pain with that.
Yeah.
Like I like, it was almost like you were saying, I want to share this with you. Like,
Totally.
it's important to me, but I can't physically do it.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't. And the same thing happened with Larry. We were sharing something, and it was something that was I wanted to share. It was something vulnerable,
Mm,
and it would not. And I'm
mm,
looking at him, he's like, just say it. And I'm like, it won't come out. It
Mm.
won't. It's stuck. And so it was over time that being aware of that, first of all, was huge.
right.
I mean, I think that for growth or healing, awareness is number one.
Right.
You have to be aware.
Right.
And so realizing that and looking at you and saying, it won't come out, Liz, it won't come out. I had to work on it. And so much of that is because when I had a voice, I got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I still struggle with sometimes being honest, because I might hurt you, then you're going to run away, and then I'm not going to have a friend anymore. You know, like that whole scenario goes in my head. If I say something to you and I offend you, you're just going to walk away from me.
Oh my goodness.
There's never like this we have a little kerfuffle and then it's okay.
Yeah. You're
my
never
head.
100% comfortable.
No, because I might hurt you and then you're going to abandon me.
Oh my goodness.
It goes that far.
Yes, I know
And
it does.
It's not near as intense.
No,
It's not near as intense.
you've done better. You've done better.
I'm working on it still.
I can always tell when it's up though, because I'll say, and when did this happen?
Yes.
And you finally have disclosed it. So
I
can
know.
tell that there's some of that still, that it's, I mean, there's still, I think you're right. I think you're still, going through and healing and growing and
Mhm.
learning and
Mhm.
things that we should all be doing regardless.
Right.
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 Growing and learning.
Right.
I think that's really, really important, but yeah. And now we're at a place in our relationship. It's like, okay, she'll tell me when she's ready.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
And you're not, and now that you're understanding me
Doesn't
more,
affect me.
it's like, I've said that, how many times have I said that? When you know someone's heart,
Yep.
right? When you know their heart, when they go off and they do something that's out of the ordinary, you don't have to get all offended and butthurt and it's just like,
Mhm.
okay, something's going on. She needs a minute or maybe whatever,
Right.
and giving the grace. And the voice also that I had to get out of my head was my mother's voice, because I, for years, abused myself.
Okay. What does that mean? How?
Oh, I was my worst critic.
Yeah. Well,
I was vicious on myself. And I think back on it and it almost brings me to tears thinking about how mean I was to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you in the EMDR how I got the voice. This is really interesting. So in EMDR, you go back and you rethink about that moment that's hitting you, and you rethink about it, and you're doing some stuff, and then you work through it, and then you work that out, and then you put a positive thing in. And in it, so one of the times, and this is different for everybody, this just worked for me.
Okay.
But I would put myself in situations where I was actually confronting them. But I was confronting them like how Liz confronts them.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
I learned a lot from you. I did. I gave him a lot of grace, and I asked a lot of questions, and I walked him through stuff. So for instance, the one, which memory should I use? So, well, the memory of my brother jumping over the couch and choking me. I stood up and went off on these people, but I didn't like cuss them out, but it was just like, what is wrong with all you people? Did you just see what happened? Are you going to do, like I had a voice for little Lisa. I came along little Lisa because there was one story where the therapist was like, well, why don't you confront your mom? And it was like this fear rose up. I'll get hurt. She said, well, what about big Lisa coming along little Lisa? And that was the game changer.
Do you know, I've heard that. Okay. So I never knew that it was, I'm going to say that initial's wrong. The EMDR that you're doing now, but someone actually said that to me, that, we're joking about why I'm so driven and why, why Liz doesn't have cruise mode. Right. And we were talking about that very thing. And I relayed the story that, about me, from when I was younger, and in a moment in time where at 6 years old, I decided that I had to have the answer and that I had to be right.
Yeah.
And that, I was always going to be ahead of everybody else. I'm going to know it before they need me to know it.
Right.
And so that was something that came to me, and he goes, maybe you need to have a conversation with that little girl.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Like, what are you, crazy?
Yeah.
And the gentleman that shared it with me, is a psychology degree. And he said to me, he says, I've got a little dog. He says, and when my rage comes up, I just pet that little dog and talk to that little dog.
There you go.
That's his thing. Right. And it just seems so out there for me.
Yeah, I know.
So logical.
Right.
You want me to talk to that little person. Right.
Right.
And it's, I think that's an exercise that I've never been guided through. It was just mentioned to me. So what you're talking about is familiar to me only because somebody mentioned to me that's a process that people can use.
Right.
But I think you need to be guided through it because there's no way. So I would have to be guided to that for sure.
Yeah, and everybody's is different. Like for me, what I realize is that little Lisa wasn't protected. Nobody protected me. Nobody came alongside. And then when she turned into an adult, the adult Lisa abused little Lisa.
Blamed little Lisa.
Blamed her. And if I made a mistake, it was a rundown of what my mom used to do, more than chastising, but just verbally beating myself up and being so hard on myself to the point I bring myself to tears. Like thoughts of, why am I here?
Oh,
it went deep.
It's debilitating.
It really is. And so learning to protect her and coming alongside her.
That's healing. Because you give power to that.
Right.
Yeah.
And protecting her. Right. I'm the only one that came along and protected her.
Right.
Me. Nobody else was doing it.
Right. And you had to come to that place.
Yeah.
So that you can, and now you're turning this into, can we talk about turning this into something really positive for you?
Yeah.
Because I understood your statement in the beginning. Like you go through things and you don't, like, I know you and I both have really strong faith.
Yeah.
That's not religion for people in the audience. That's faith.
Right.
And that I do believe that everything, it seems like such a trite statement. Everything happens for a reason. We just don't know what that reason is.
Right.
In time. And so you now have found your purpose and you couldn't have, and it's a purpose that's going to fill you.
Right.
And that we've been talking about for how many years?
A long time.
Just going into doing this in some way, shape or form. And you will now be able to turn that into some positive energy to help other people through. Because I think that there's therapy and I think that there's work that has to be done. And I think that there's lots of people with degrees that will tell you how to do it. But I think your experience, you'll be able to empathize and walk through it. That it's okay to feel this way, maybe that. So how do you think you're going to share that with people? That's, I guess, where we land with this is, how do you see yourself in these people's lives?
Well, I'll tell you, my goal is to shorten people's pain.
Oh, that's amazing.
Shorten people's pain.
I love that.
Yeah. That really, when you say that, that's the very first thing that comes to my mind, is to shorten their pain, because I had so many years of pain and I had to fumble through it and fail and succeed. And, and if I can help someone get the right perspective of who they are and not because of what happened to them, and really teach them who they are, and reduce that pain, and they're not spending 30, 40, 50 years trying to figure this thing out. That is what the reason why I'm doing this. That's why I'm putting myself out there. I'm sharing my story that I've never shared with anybody, right? Except for therapists.
Right.
I didn't even realize I didn't even share it with everybody, I didn't even realize I hadn't.
Correct. And so many people that know you would not have any clue.
That is so interesting. See, it's so interesting to hear your side of it. It's so interesting.
They would never have any clue. I mean, people that you in the last job that you have, there's so many people there that would never know.
Yeah, that's true.
They would never know, because that's not who you are. It's not who you present.
It's not
to
my
the public.
identity.
You are not a victim. You're a grown woman who is taking control of this pain and putting it where it belongs, and healing it, and just doing some really great work.
What helped me with my parents and really deeply forgiving them and understanding them is over the last, probably, year or so, I have found so much. I mean, I already knew my dad's story. I knew my dad was severely abused by his father and left home when he was 14. And that's why he thought I should just quit my schooling at 16 because he was successful at 14 and didn't do high school. So that explains a lot of his behavior, the hiding. As soon as my brother, things got escalated, he got triggered clearly and he went and hid because that little boy in him was just in fear.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom is the one that I found out so much information about. And it really gave me insight on her. And she, at a young age, her mother wasn't married and my mom lived with her grandmother for a few years. Her mother ended up getting married several times, had several children. Come to find out there's at least 2 kids that we know of that were adopted out. I don't know if my mom knew about them. So my mom had this childhood that was completely unstable. I'm sure there was abuse. I mean, abuse was worse then when she was young than when we were young. And so I understand. And my mother hated her mother, hated her mother. There was a lot of anger in my mom, and I get it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, separating the who from the do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still struggle with that. I still get mad at her when something comes up in me that I'm like, you know, it's just like my mom never taught me how to be a girl. She never taught me how to, this is going to get a little explicit, but even when I started my period, I didn't know what a tampon was. I didn't know how to put it in. She didn't teach me. I had to learn by myself.
Right.
You know, she didn't teach me the things to be a woman. She didn't. She would tease me instead.
You know, but I think that's a little bit generational.
Probably.
My mother handed me a book, and the book was called, I'll never forget it, How Do I Tell My Daughter? That's the name of the book.
I'm not going to read it to you. I'm just going to give it to you to read.
Read it. If you have any questions, let me know. But she wasn't really encouraging the questions. So just read the book. I just will never forget that.
It is, because there's a lot of quiet, you know, there's like, and the kids are
those things.
Seen and not heard. And, you know,
they're taking their daughters to Victoria's Secrets when they're 12, you know,
they're wearing makeup. They're
very different world.
Yeah. It's a very different world. So, yeah.
That's so funny. We are facing a different generation, but unfortunately for us in this world, we still have people in pain, and we still have people that I'm excited for you to get this message out, because I think there's so many people that you could help.
I hope
with this. I'm just watching your journey. It's been amazing.
I know. And it's been amazing having you along for the ride. You're a trooper, because you put up with some stuff.
Nope. Never felt that way. Never felt like it was a burden. Always felt like, well, you know, my own mission in life, right? If I could just make a difference, then that's what I wanted to do for you.
And you do. You did. And you do.
I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you for letting me share this with you.
Oh, thank you. I know. It's so precious. I wouldn't share it with anybody else. You're the best person to do this with.
It's awesome. I can't wait to see how this goes.
I know.